The podcast you're about to hear contains questionable taste, bad jokes, and good research. Your hosts will usually agree, but when they don't, be prepared for some name-calling, petty whining, and desperate callbacks to poorly remembered or hastily Googled research. They are human after all. Feel free to call them on their bullshit, but if you do, be prepared for some blowback. Welcome to Atheism 101, a beginner's guide to skeptical thinking.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Atheism 101 with Matt and Tim.
Salutan.
What the fuck does that mean?
That means hello in Esperanto, and it also sounded like Street Fighter. Hayuken.
All right, guys. Well, we have a super special show planned for you today. We are going to talk to author Peter Boghossian. He's a lot more than an author, but I don't want to spend 5 minutes giving his bona fides, so I'll just say he's an author. And we're going to talk about his book, A Manual for Creating Atheists, which was a real eye-opener for me. I think it's an incredible book. How'd you feel about it, Tim?
It changed a lot of my thinking on a lot of the ways that I approach the faithful, I guess you would say.
I say in the interview I was happy with how many of the techniques that I was already using, but there were some very fundamental things that I was missing out on, I think. And I think he did an incredible job writing a persuasive, eloquent, very sensible book. And I think everybody should read it. So without further ado, why don't we get into the interview, and then we'll be back in about an hour to say goodbye.
Goodbye. Oh, shit. That's in an hour.
Yeah, you stupid fucker. All right, let's go talk to Peter Boghossian.
We have with us now Peter Boghossian. Welcome to Atheism 101.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
First off, this is just, it's a pleasure to have you on, and it's a tribute to social media of today that, I can go on Twitter and tweet at an author and have them come on our smallish podcast to talk about their book. And, it's obviously something that's been making the rounds around the podcast, and you've definitely become one of the leading voices in our movement right now. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thanks for doing what you do. And for me, it's really important that this isn't about a cult of personality or one person or a leading voice, but these ideas that need to get out there, that need to gain traction so that all of us collectively, even people who are harboring these delusions, can help others overcome. And really, in a really profound way, I mean that. So thanks.
So obviously the reason we had you on, both Matt and myself have read the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. Do you want to take a second just to give us your overview and your reasons for writing the book?
Sure. A Manual for Creating Atheists it teaches people how to talk others out of faith, out of superstition, and into reason and rationality. And I wrote the book precisely because I felt it was, the problems of faith-based beliefs, we had to do something about it. And people have written so much about how to talk somebody into superstition or faith, and no one had ever done anything to the contrary. Mm-hmm. So that was the way that I tried to make a contribution.
Now, there's a lot of the Four Horsemen. There was a lot of talk about, it was kind of 9/11 that prompted them to kind of become very active and start pursuing challenging faith. Was there anything in your background that led to this, or is it just kind of a slow climb?
It was a slow climb. It had been teaching for many, many, many years in many, many, many contexts. And it really was that I saw a problem. I thought I could do something about the problem, and I pursued it with gusto. But there was no one incident that really stands out. There was no one thing I wasn't raped by a priest, or, I'm not homosexual. I wasn't, denied civil rights or civil liberties. There was nothing. I have not personally been aggrieved by the hosts of the faith virus, although it's affected me as a citizen and as a human being. But no, there wasn't any one particular thing.
Were you raised in a religious family?
My mom was Catholic, Roman Catholic. My dad, we went to the Armenian Apostolic Church, but I don't think he ever really believed it. But he was from that generation in which you really couldn't be vocal about it, or you couldn't make those kind of candid admissions. So I think he was a atheist agnostic, and my mom, as I read about in the book, didn't really share that with me. And in the end of her life, I think she became, if not a deist, somewhat of a Christian theist.
Yeah, that was something that rang very true with me, because I had a very similar experience with my mother as she passed. And it's actually come up just recently in the past few podcasts. It was very interesting to read that in your book, and it's like, hey, somebody else went through the same thing.
Yeah. May I ask how long ago did your mom die?
5 years now.
Okay. Was it I mean, I don't want to pry. Was it slow?
No, that's fine. It was quick but slow. It was about 18 months from a diagnosis of acute lymphatic leukemia, and they thought it was going to be one of those, like, she's going to live for 30 years with it, and then 18 months later she was gone. So,
well, I'm really sorry. It was
thank you.
Watershed moment in my life, and that whole experience was. So I'm truly sorry about that.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the reasons. Me and Matt are doing this, and I spoke last week. There was a story about how when my parents got divorced, I was about 4, and the priest told my mother that she was going to burn in hell. Oh. And me and my sister have been talking about it, and we think that's probably one of the reasons she started to distance herself from the church. It's like, that would probably do it, huh?
Yeah, it makes you rethink, or at least I'll speak for myself. It certainly made me rethink things in my life about what matters and what's important. And you try to balance all these things in your life, being a dad, having a job, doing work, and it makes it even more difficult, I think, when the thing that you do, like, I feel really strongly about helping people overcome faith, and I try to balance that with maybe not being as present of a father as I should be. And how do you navigate that? And it really made me think about those things in my life that mattered. Like, is it more important, these immediate relationships that we develop, or leaving the world better for our kids? And how do we navigate those social realities?
Yeah, that's something I'm dealing with too as well. Matt's an expecting father, and I have a 3-year-old. So.
Congrats!
Thanks. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about. And you address this a bit in the book. Raising skeptical children, and it's something that I am excited about. But it's that one more thing. I think that religion comes so naturally, in raising children, because it's a really effective tool for, discipline and stuff like that. But, I think it's even, of course, I'm just projecting here. I don't know, but, it seems like it's just another thing for me to worry about getting right, making sure that I raise her, with a good set of tools to determine what's true or not. And, I think in many ways it seems to me like that might be a harder challenge than raising someone with religion, but I don't know yet. I'll find out.
I think it's right, because skepticism requires work. I'll give you unsolicited advice. Just don't worry about it.
Oh,
I mean, really, you just do the best that you can do. My kid, I'm the least mechanical person around. My kid will never know how to fix a car. My kid will never see the inside of I'll never even open the hood for him, but I'll give him things that I can give him. And I'm saying him because my son is a little older than my daughter. Mm-hmm. So, for example, last night I worked with him on his essay and, talked about hyphenations and M dashes and things like that. So you give your kids what you can give them. And I don't know if you saw the Metallica documentary, Some Kind of Monster, but just being in these contexts, just your son or daughter just being around you when you do these things. My son goes to many of my talks with me. And again, my daughter is significantly younger, so that's not an option for her yet, but just raising them in these sorts of environments is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, me being the person I am is going to affect it more than anything that I'm probably going to do actively. It's just, I have a little over a month until the due date, so I'm in that phase where I'm freaking out about everything,
Yeah, no, I understand. Hey, two more yet unsolicited pieces of advice. One thing is you just have to set aside time to realize that when you have a kid, all the things that you think, it just isn't going to be this romanticized vision of what you think. It's going to be sleep deprivation. And you have to figure out how to deal with that. And in a really practical way, like, get stuff in the freezer, get stuff set up. Yeah. If you can afford someone to come in to clean that, little things like that, that would really help. But the second thing is more of a thematic look. Something that helped me or was influential to me is, I think I wrote about this in the book. I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning in college, and there was just a line in there that was very profound to me when he's in the concentration camp and he had all this stuff and he was naked and alone, or virtually naked and alone, right? And that's the famous guard pointing to which side you go to. Do you go to the death camp or do you go to work to death? And it kind of struck me at that moment is that, wow, like what you have is you have really the things that can't be taken away from you. And I thought about that in the context of parenthood. So I try to give my kids jujitsu so they can defend themselves. That was a failure, by the way. They rejected that. So, okay. I try to give them, you do what you can do. That's why I say don't worry about it too much. Yeah. I try to give them a second or in a third language, and I think I've been fairly successful at that, but try to give them these, attitudinal dispositions or what have you through modeling. But yeah, it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a great ride. I wouldn't worry about it too much, but I would definitely prepare ahead of time so that these things aren't, lurched at you at the last minute.
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job with that. And from here on out, consider your advice asked for. The rest of the show.
Okay.
It is implied.
Yeah.
All right. Just don't count it for too much. Keep it into perspective.
Yeah, I think I do okay with that.
All right.
So what has the response to the book been?
It's been what one would expect it to be. It's been those who've been indoctrinated or inculcated or infected by the faith virus have how can I frame this in a way that they haven't been as receptive to the ideas as they might have been. Yeah. Many in the free thought community were incredibly receptive to the ideas. And so I've had some people who have actually gone out, and I've retweeted some of those videos, and they've practiced this. The response has been amazing in one sense, and it's created somewhat of a movement where these street epistemology clinics pop up around the country, and people record. Yeah. And so the idea is that I can't help everybody. I'm just one guy. So the tools in the book and the TV show I'm coming out with it in the game, et cetera, and the Kindle single are going to give people the skills to teach them how to help people through these delusions. And, I want to say that I sometimes get, I don't know if this doesn't really answer your question, but I really get frustrated sometimes. Like I just get frustrated. You know that guy recently who got killed by the snake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just get frustrated by all these people like, ha ha, you idiot, you creatard, you loser. I mean, that's just uncalled for. Like, that's a human being who has a kid and a family, right? And these people that is so unkind. This guy has been infected by the faith virus. He needs our charity. He doesn't need to, his daughter doesn't need to, just think about that. This guy died because his beliefs were out of alignment with reality. And then you have other people making fun of him for, how would his daughter feel about that? That's a horrible, horrible thing to do. And so we need to cultivate more charity towards these people who are infected by the faith virus. They need our help. That guy, he needs our help. He doesn't need derision. He doesn't need ridicule. He doesn't need scorn. He needs someone to help him get over these delusions. And the delusions which he obviously attempted to indoctrinate his children. Yeah.
Well, if YouTube comments have taught us nothing, it's that most people are awful, so.
Yeah, I think Schadenfreude is an incredibly powerful force. That's another front to fight on.
It's the anonymity of those comments, which is a problem. Yeah. It's that, and it's not even the anonymity, it's the problem. It's the problem that people have they're just nowhere near as compassionate towards people of faith that they should be. People of faith really in many senses are issuing cries for help. I'm increasingly beginning to think that's what the entire field of apologetics is. I think it's a cry for help.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from a bit.
As William Lane Craig cashes another check.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing I was talking about with my buddy the other day, that people who write these, you mentioned off here Joel Osteen, and I think he's truly one of the worst perpetrators of this. His audiobooks, his, book book. I'm not even going to name it to give it. Actually, edit out Bill O'Reilly's name.
We'll throw in a big beep.
That book has dominated the charts on Amazon. It's just dominated. I mean, he has made, I don't even know how much he's made off of just propagating extreme silliness. And I don't know I don't know if he's sincere. I don't know. I mean, he seems like a very smart guy. I just can't believe that whole tide goes in, tide goes out. Yeah. I mean, I have trouble I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and think that they're sincere. And I realize that there are financial interests. I mean, I really want to make that clear that people are invested in this, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a problem. You know, it's a big problem.
I came across someone in my life who shall remain unnamed, who was reading the book, I believe it's called Why I Stayed, and I think it was Ted Haggard's wife.
Oh, okay.
If I've got the right
he's the one that got caught with the prostitute.
Yeah, and it was basically, the book was basically saying, you know, I stayed because Jesus is going to fix him. And that's the stuff, I audibly gasped when I saw the book, because I was just so surprised that this person was reading this book, and to be able to read a book like that, and it turns out, believe what's in there, that is incredibly dangerous to me.
Right.
You know, because that fosters just so much. Is everybody still here?
Yeah.
Oh, looked like something happened. Shit.
No, we were just pensive.
That just, now I completely lost what I was saying.
That's okay. You know, that doesn't change when you add one person to the mix or 10 people to the mix or society. I mean, the fundamental mistake that people have about Jesus fixing things, fixing their husband, fixing the society, fixing the ecological situation, that faulty epistemology, that incorrect way to know things isn't just related to her husband. It's related to all aspects of reality.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is then in aggregate, when people vote in a democracy, that they try to legislate or institutionalize those bad consequences of faith-based epistemologies.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying stuff.
It is. It's completely terrifying. And so how do we help people to realize that you're responsible for yourself, that you need to stand on your own 2 feet? The whole concept of some supernatural entity fixing a problem in society or something with an individual, that's illusory. And we really can't get to addressing our own problems until we set aside these very dangerous illusions and delusions that prevent us from acting on real problems that real people face.
Yeah. What's the draw, do you think, for someone to accept that reasoning, that thinking that somebody else is going to fix this problem for me? I mean, is it laziness on their part, or is it they don't have enough confidence in themselves?
I think it's a good question. I think it's a combination of a bunch of things. I think it's easy, it's simple, that just believe in X and you'll get all these nice rewards. I think that it gives people comfort. I think that that's predominantly it. I shouldn't say predominantly. I can't give you a percentage.
Yeah.
I think that it's a consequence of a poor educational system, and we could talk about that and how in my book I talk about how liberalism has damaged the educational system. I think it's a consequence of a number of things. You know, hopeful thinking, confusing the subjective with the objective, being born into these. That's another reason why we shouldn't be upset with these people, because they really are epistemic victims.
Yeah.
You know, people are all born into these communities. You know, as I write in the book, the priest wouldn't let my grandfather walk down the aisle with my mom. Mm-hmm. So people are just born in these communities, and instead of saying, well, screw you, she's my daughter, he deferred to the judgment of the priest. And I don't blame him, because that's the society and the time in which he lived.
Yeah.
And those religious authorities yielded or had more influence. I mean, we desperately need to change that, and that is changing now. I remember when I was a kid, I actually remember her name, I won't say it on air, but when I was very, very young, there was someone in town who was divorced, and I remember listening to these conversations. Oh, you know, she's divorced. You know, there's a big stigma towards divorce or about divorce. We don't have many of those stigmas. We don't have, in one sense, those were control mechanisms, or those were ways that the society cohered. So again, it's a complicated problem for why people believe things. I don't think it lends itself to one simple answer.
I wish there was.
Oh, no. I mean, I know that was a little bit of a joke, but I prefer how complicated we are. You know? That's just a little silly side note, but I love how interesting all this stuff is, and learning about it and reading about a lot of the approaches that you put in your book were great. But there's something that you'll learn about me here, Peter, is that I like to go off on tangents. So what I'm going to do...
You go on I'm just sitting here, I got an hour, you talk, you can ask me any question you want, and if I don't, I'll give you my promise right now. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know, but I'm not gonna lie to you. Or if you're asking me intimate questions about my sex life that I'm not gonna answer, I'll say that too. But you can ask me anything you want.
Hopefully I have enough tact not to do that. But Tim, why don't we just stick with the questions you got? I like the ones you had. I'll try and keep my tangents to a minimum.
just the minimum.
Yeah.
That's all I ask. In the beginning of the book, you discuss deepities, which is the idea of these nonsensical quotes, and I assume that's from Deepak, correct?
Well, the deepity itself, the idea of a deepity is from Daniel Dennett.
Yeah.
Dennett, yes.
Yeah, and as I write in the index of the book, when I explain people, Deepak Chopra is a black belt. Deepity black belt. Yeah.
Yes.
He has no equal. In fact, he's even above a black. He's a red belt. He's a supreme grand master of the deepity.
Yeah.
We have a segment on the show where I actually read his tweets and then respond to them very childishly. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things to make, and I remember reading that. I'm like, because that's like when I was reading, it was right when I started to make them, and I was like, oh, that's funny. That's just hilarious.
I think my favorite response to any of them you had was at the end of the segment, and you had gone through and made fun of the rest of them, and his last tweet that you read, you just went, "What the fuck does that even mean? I can't even make fun of that."
That's how I feel about everything he says.
Oh man,
he is quite something, and I love to read the comments after the tweets, and there's a few skeptical people on there where you can hear them there, and they're like, that's just ridiculous, that doesn't even make sense, right. And then other people are like, oh, that's so profound, and that's it's brilliant, and it's like, right. What do you say to someone who thinks that these nonsense things are phenomenal? What's the response to them?
See, well, I mean, even the problem is that, as I mentioned in my TAM talk, that nonsense is lucrative, right? So, it's a reflection of what people value. A lot of people, they're just trying to make it through the day, right? I mean, my wife would be a great example. She works really hard. She works with drug addicts, et cetera, et cetera. She comes home and she's done. I mean, she is just done. She's done like American Idol done. She doesn't want to engage complicated ideas. She did that the whole day with life and death situations. So, I mean, that's part of the problem, but that Chicken Soup for the Soul, all of these other books, if you look at the top books that sell, especially in religion and spirituality, they're not books on how to help people think or how to help people deal with problems or how to navigate emotional complexities in life. They're really these base self-help books. And people like Chopra, they complicate everybody's epistemic situation because they propagate such nonsense. And Joel Osteen is another one who's up there. And they are millionaires.
Yep.
I mean, Osteen, I mean, it really is the perfect title for it is lucrative nonsense.
Lucrative nonsense. I like it a lot. The tweet that Matt was referring to before is, matter is dense form of mind. Mind is a subtle form of matter. Self is the awareness in which both arise and subside.
Right. It's a deepity.
Yep.
My eyes glazed over. I tried not to have that happen. I couldn't help it. But the funny thing with Deepak real quick is when I first joined Twitter, one of my first tweets was what is this nonsense? What is going on with this Deepak Chopra person? And within an hour, I'll be generous, within an hour, someone from one of his command centers or whatever, someone that was associated with his whole machine followed me on Twitter. And I was like, wow, that's strange. I said, hello, how are you? Thanks for the follow. And they never responded to me. They just kind of, I don't know.
Wow, it's like NSA style stuff.
Yeah, it was strange. Do you really search that constantly for your name on Twitter? And then was it an intimidation factor? I don't know. I kept talking about him, so whatever. But it was just, it was a strange little little thing that I never really got closure on, but it was weird.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent he's best ignored. The problem is that he's influenced and affecting so many people and really domains of discourse of silliness that he's putting out there that silliness has to be countered. The problem is that every time you counter that silliness, it just makes him more popular. Yeah. So, it's really a lose-lose situation.
He just had a debate with Dawkins a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he did, and that was something.
Did you hear the audio?
I heard some of the audio, and we provided interns for the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, and we were researching or looking at that. And I look at him, I look at some of the stuff. I mean, I have to because I teach it, right, at Portland State University. We look at some of the stuff in the science and pseudoscience class, and we really take a step back and ask, well, what does this actually mean? What does it mean when someone says this? And a couple of my students wrote they were physics majors. They wrote fantastic papers for I think it was a science pseudoscience class about what do these words mean in a scientific context, and let's see if we could translate that to make sense of that. To give him what they call a hermeneutic of charity, like a charitable interpretation for what it is that he's saying. And it was an absolute miserable failure because what he's saying is just predicated upon nothing.
Oh man, that's great.
It's completely made up. It's total make-believe.
Yeah.
Man. As a side note, I would have loved to have gone to your university because it seems like you have a lot of cool classes.
Yeah, it's fun. We do. I don't know how they'll be affected by budget cuts, et cetera, but we have, I really love it. It's great. I love the science and pseudoscience. I love the atheism class. There are not many universities at all that have atheism classes, and for those people who are really into it and want to take it to a whole new level, there's a new atheism class, which we actually don't look at the Four Horsemen, but we dig deeper. We look at the very, very, I find them to be some of the most profound arguments for the existence of God, new atheism, a little bit as a social movement, but it's basically the ideas within new atheism. And we look at Shelley Kagan. I mean, we look at people that we don't usually associate with, or people, let me frame it this way, people that even if you're into this stuff, you might not have heard of these people.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome. Much better than the classes that me and Matt had to take.
Yeah, it's fun. Hopefully I'll be able to still offer that. The state of Oregon is in like most states actually, the majority of states are in a budget crisis and they're trying to figure out, whether they should fund public education or infrastructure. It's a complicated problem.
Good luck.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I hope so. And by the time you air this, that we'll find out if the union is going to go on strike or not for more funds, which would be it's a rather unhappy situation when a good institution doesn't receive funding because of an economic situation.
Yeah. I guess moving back to the book, you define faith as pretending to know things you don't know.
Yeah, I just wrote an article about that today. Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
love that.
That is something that I hadn't heard before I read the book. Is that something that you kind of came up with on your own, or is it something that was kind of picked from different things here and there?
Oh, that idea's been out there forever. I mean, it was been out there from so many people. Mark Twain. I mean, that idea of pretending to know something you don't know has been out there. I certainly didn't, I tried to popularize it and put it together and give a justification for it. But the thing about pretending to know things you don't know, and I mentioned this in the book, not all instances of pretending to know things you don't know are an example of faith.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not all people of faith are pretending to know things they don't know. There are some people of faith who are legitimately delusional and have no mechanism by which they can discern a delusion from reality. Yeah. And I think that like we just talked about actually, like the snake guy, the guy the Pentecostal who died from the rattlesnake. Like he wasn't pretending to know anything. If he was, you know how I can demonstrate that too? The evidence for that is that he picked up the snake in the first place.
And not only that, but his father died the same way. I mean, that's a perfect example because if anything, he has the most compelling evidence against his belief system that you could come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, it clearly doesn't work.
The problem that once you violate the norms of rationality, or once you try to make reason do something that it it just can't do. Like, reason can't be used to defend unreason. I mean, you can use words and linguistic structure, you can use a language to do that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that then one can give a response like, well, my dad didn't have enough faith. If my dad had enough faith, he wouldn't have died from a snake bite. But I, unlike my dad, have enough faith. Yeah. And that rationale can continue ad nauseum for generations. Or maybe not if they start handling snakes young enough. There will be no more generations.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think as evidenced by a certain kind of fundamental pragmatism that those guys weren't pretending to know anything.
Right.
But just a linguistic analysis of how people actually use the word faith, they are certainly pretending to know something they don't know.
I absolutely love that chart in the beginning where you substitute in pretending to know things you don't know for faith. I just found that awesome. I had so much fun with that.
You know, it's funny. You never really know what people are going to like and what people don't like. I am amazed. So many people like that in Chapter 8, and I'm surprised that people haven't criticized me for. Here's what I thought I was going to get criticized for. I thought I was going to get criticized for my definition of atheist. No one's criticized me for. I mean, nobody. And that was really. I thought people were really going to rain heavy on me for that.
Well, yeah. That, I obviously didn't have an objection to it because if I did, it would jump right to my mind. So how did you define it?
I defined it as, I don't think there's sufficient evidence to warrant belief in God.
Yeah.
But if I were shown sufficient evidence, I would believe.
Yeah. Well,
and I don't just mean God of deism. I mean, anything really.
Yeah. No, I think that's
I'm an atheist in regard to, werewolves too.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I would classify myself. So yeah, I didn't have any objection to that. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make that clear for the audience.
No one's interrupted. We're just having a chat. So nobody, and other things, I thought people were going to hit me for the feminism stuff or the leftism stuff. I think nobody was upset about that at all. Well, at least not, it's hard to say. I mean, certainly nobody said anything to me about it, which was really surprising.
It's especially the leftist stuff. It was something that maybe like if someone had said, hey, this book has, a part about how liberalism is hurting education and stuff, like, well, that's stupid. But then when you actually read your reasoning and logic, I was like, well, that makes perfect sense. And, it was just it was very well written and very well presented, and the argument was good. So I think like any good atheist, or any good logical thinker, you have to take the evidence and then change your views.
I would think so. I mean, I would think was a clarion call or a wake-up call or a way to say, hey, look, we have a problem. This is not an insurmountable problem. It's not incorrigible. It can be dealt with. We can figure out what the solution to this is. It's funny when you read the Christian criticisms of the book. Boy, I mean, it really is fascinating, the level of doxastic closure and confirmation bias. And that's what I don't think people understand, how difficult this is. We're doing this show, The Reason Whisperer, in which I go to temples and churches and synagogues and mosques, and I help people begin their process of deconversion. And we're setting up booths on the street, faith booths, and people are going to come in and we're going to give them free interventions, and we're going to get it all on film, and we're going to hopefully release little snippets of these with a post-analysis. So we'll go through the interventions and we'll show the ones that fail and the ones that succeed. There'll be a match. But you're really trying to take somebody out of a place of indoctrination and encrusted space that not only have they been in their whole lifetime, but they have social mechanisms that keep them coming back to those things. And so it is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. It's not something one enters into too capriciously. Certainly the call for civility is great and the call for questioning one's faith is good, but really trying to follow that template, you're trying to do something that's complicated. There's a guy online, I just followed him on Twitter, who posts some fantastic work of videos with pre-contemplatives. I think he's in San Antonio. Let me see. I'm not near my computer immediately, but let me just pull it up for a second. But he does some fascinating work. It's at MAGNABOSCO, Anthony Magnabosco. And he puts those videos online, and they're really quite good. You could also see the evolution of the questions. And the difficulty, I've only seen him, in the book gives a trans-theoretical model, I've only seen him working with pre-contemplatives. But those conversations are really interesting. And what I'd love to do is to create thousands of more people like that.
I think one of the biggest things that I took from listening to the audiobook is that, first of all, I was happy with how many of the things that you described that I did. That felt nice to have that reassurance. But one of the biggest things that I took away from the book, and I think it's the best thing that I could for me, is that I've always approached talking to people about faith, well, really, I was talking about religion, and I think that's the crux of it, is that I would go, fact, these counteract all these things that you're talking about. Why doesn't this make any difference? And your book made me go, oh, I've been doing that completely wrong.
Yeah, not to make you feel bad or anything, but it could be that you worsened their epistemic situation.
Yes, I could have told you that before reading the book, because that was my experience, that it didn't work. So I'm at a point now, and part of why I was so excited to have this book come up is that I'm building up to a conversation that has been looming in my future for years. And to have this book right now, I think is going to help this conversation go much better than it may have gone beforehand. So
a conversation with someone in particular? Or?
Yes, yeah.
His brother.
Well, it's
someone. We talked about it like 9 times already.
All right.
Well, you can just edit that part out. I can give you some specifics if you want to help your brother. If you want, we'll do that now. How would you like to spend the rest of our time? You want to ask more questions? It's totally up to you guys. Your show.
Yeah. So I was thinking about doing, if you're up for a little bit of role playing.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. Just one quick question. Is it weird to talk to somebody after you read their audiobook? Is that a little creepy?
No. Maybe I could make it creepy, but no, I don't think so.
Because whenever I listen to, because I, like you, I don't have much time either, but I like to listen to audiobooks and such on my, you like to listen to them. Obviously, that's what an audiobook is, but I find it a little weird once I start interacting with the author. I'm like, wow, I just heard their voice for 10 hours.
I think but it's not creepy. I think the most exciting thing about doing this podcast, we've talked to a few people that I've been fans of, and that part is a little hard to overcome because I tend to be a little bit like a fanboy. But what I take away most from it is that you don't often, it's different with social media now, but you don't often get to really ask an author, say, or a creator in general, questions about their work, in this intimate of a way, so I'm excited about that. But no, I wouldn't call it creepy.
Interesting. Well, go ahead. Yeah, then ask anything you want. Here I am.
Well, here's where I'm at. I've started the conversation, and basically what I'm doing is defining terms, figuring out exactly what his beliefs are, because I don't want to be attacking a straw man position, first of all, but, I just want to understand what he believes and, transition that to how he knows those things.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
So in order for me to continue this conversation, I need a little background. Do you get along with him? How old is he, etc.?
He's older than me. I would call him a fundamentalist, but that is my assumption right now. I can figure out that he's at least leaning that way from some of the beliefs that I know that he holds, but I'm just trying to, and the whole thing, and this might affect how you think I should handle it, but it's to mend this gap that we have between us, to make so that this whole religion thing isn't an issue, that he doesn't care that I'm an atheist, that I hopefully come to the end of this not be worrying about his decision-making process based on his religious beliefs.
Can I ask, what is his religion?
Christian.
Is he a particular flavor or sect?
Yeah, it's he goes to one of those mega churches down here in the South.
Wow, that's okay. That's okay. Well, that's a very useful piece of information. Okay.
So, it's Joel Osteen's.
No.
And do you love your brother?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're very different and we're awkward together. And I want to overcome that. And part of that is figuring out how we look at the world and how we interact in it. And then, with any luck, some of these harder, more dangerous beliefs, and how he makes decisions. Like he'll, instead of, hey, maybe don't just pray about it, do a little research, look into the things that you're making decisions about, just get him over that hump just a little bit. I'm not looking to take away his faith necessarily. If that's a byproduct of this, hey, great. But in this situation, my immediate goal is just get a little bit of comfort in the relationship. Does that make sense?
It does, so he's an older brother, so there are some power issues there. You said that there was an awkwardness, so the rapport is already there, but you could approach I would still suggest that you approach it as an intervention. You could approach the intervention after you do some more lengthy rapport building activity in which the focus is not on you or him, like watching a movie or playing a game of golf. I'm thinking of those miniature putt-putt golf things with the kids or what have you. And then you could approach him honestly and sincerely. And I would start by acknowledging the facts of how you perceive your relationship. I would start with subjective statements like I feel, so that he doesn't feel threatened. I feel that there's an awkwardness in this relationship, and I love you. You're my brother, and I'm trying to figure out that awkwardness. I mean, again, if you're trying to figure it out, then you say you're trying to figure it out. Or I would like for there not to be awkwardness, and I don't know what the reason for this is. I don't know if we have different beliefs about the creator of the universe, and again, when you frame it like that, you're saying we and not you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how you could do rapport building activity, and then you could start by acknowledging some of your fears to him right off the bat. Excuse me. So some of your vulnerabilities, and then you could ask him what he thinks, and then you could begin that conversation in sincerity like that.
Yeah. My main thrust really is trying to address the decision-making process that, he has in place. And it's essentially, I ask God and he tells me what to do and I do it. I mean, to me, obviously, he's just thinking that he's praying and getting an answer where he's just thinking it out in his own head, but
he's answering himself.
He comes to decisions that frankly are disturbing to someone who likes to think things through and figure out the best course of action, and that's, if I can change that, and really I didn't know how to do it, and reading your book, I went, these are good guideposts. These are incredible techniques. If I can make these work, I have a chance for success. So that's my thrust is, undermining, well, I don't know if I want to say undermining, but having a conversation with him about what he thinks faith is, how he comes to the knowledge that he thinks he has, and address the decision-making things, because when it comes down to it, if he believes in God, hey, that's okay. What really bothers me is what you do with it. How you interact with the world based on that. And if I can make a dent in that, I'll be content, and
yeah, I mean, I think you should totally be able to help him. I don't see why you couldn't at least help him to be more reflective and more humble about what it is that he claims to know. I mean, you might, again, my suggestion in addition to everything I said was really just follow the templates and don't ask a question to ask a question you want to know. I mean, this philosopher named Habermas talks about the purpose of communication being mutual understanding. So you have to seek first to understand. That's the Covey thing. Like, really understand what he believes, and watch your tone, watch your inflection, watch your voice. And you want to gently bring him back to some of these ideas. And I think you're situated well as his brother, and having that history with him, I don't think that he'll accuse you of being a demon, although he may accuse you of being possessed by a demon. Certainly you wouldn't want him to read the cover of the book or see the cover of the book, but because that will invoke a defensive posture, right?
Yes, yeah.
So, I mean, I'd like to hear a follow-up from you about how that goes.
Yeah,
but again, just try to stick to the template and the ideas in the book, and don't do anything crazy. Don't vary from that, and you should be fine.
what would your response be to if you're in an intervention and somebody says, or you ask, like, how did you come to this conclusion? And they say, well, I asked God and he told me.
Well, it would depend. Again, that's why I asked the questions about the background. I would say, well, let's see if we can get some other things out of God, like a cure for prostate cancer. And so the idea would be you try to get them to understand that it wasn't God talking to them, it was them talking to themselves. And you could try to help them understand that by asking to get answers from God about human suffering, to alleviate human suffering. I mean, that's just one approach or one something you can do to help people realize that the act of speaking to oneself is not speaking to some supernatural being. There are many, many ways to do it, yeah.
Yeah, I love in the book how you frame it as getting them to come to the conclusion on their own, and that's an important distinction that I wasn't sure that I was doing at all before,
Yeah,
that's absolutely vital. You can't say the things to people. There's a great little article on how to teach kids. It's called by this guy Garlikov. It's called Teaching by Asking Instead of Telling. Yeah. But the idea is that you want to help people by asking them if the positions that they hold make sense. And to do that, what you're really asking them to do is what Socrates' question is. You're asking them to lead an examined life. And you're asking them to be sincere and honest with themselves. And the way that you do that is never by telling anybody something. They have to come to these conclusions. Your brother has to come to these conclusions himself. But even more than that, he has to value complete sincerity and honesty with regard to the things that he believes. And you can help him in multiple ways. You could help him by modeling the behavior. You could help him by asking a series of directed or targeted questions. But again, you're working with somebody who has a very severely damaged epistemology, and reconstructing that doesn't come overnight. So it took him years to get into this situation in place of delusion, and he's not going to enter it tomorrow. He's not going to leave that or exit it after one conversation. I mean, one conversation could be the catalyst for that, and I would claim that it's actually incumbent upon you morally to help him out of that.
I agree.
Fantastic.
Yep. Well, any more questions, Tim?
We're just about at the hour, so that's probably a good place to stop it.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you read the book and you're actually going to use some of these techniques. Please drop me an email about how that intervention went and follow up with him afterwards. So don't just leave him there, but follow up and try to help him. I mean, again, part of the thing that I've been studying now is that you can help someone and they go immediately back in their faith communities, and the people with whom they're engaged, those gaps, those doubts that you've helped to sow get filled by these other communal delusions that people share. So follow up with them frequently. And again, whatever you do, just remember the broad themes in chapter 4, particularly in your case. You don't want to go back to old patterns that you've had with him as a child, patterns that you have a tendency to repeat that are unhelpful and unproductive.
Yeah, it's exciting and it's terrifying, and I'm the type of person who really doesn't like to leave things unfinished. So I'm motivated to continue this conversation as long as it takes. I mean, if it was a stranger on the street, it might be a slightly different story. But I do care about really, and I hate how arrogant this sounds, but really to try and help him get rid of these delusions.
One thing you could do, this is just an idea. I've never recommended this so bluntly to someone before, but there's a Facebook page entitled Street Epistemology, and you can post some of the snippets of the conversations you have and see if people there, user-generated street epistemology, if you will, see if some of the people there have some ideas for how to engender doxastic openness. See if people have some ideas. You give them a little background and maybe even post the link to this podcast and say, here's my brother, here's the situation. I said this, he said this. Could anybody help suss that out, or any ideas about how to continue? And there are some people on there who are just fantastic. They have a knack for this kind of thing.
That brings to mind one question that I had in listening to the book, and this might be one of the things that I was thinking about early on that you answered. So forgive me if you did, but how important is, I've spent years years studying all of this stuff. You know, I feel like I have a pretty good background knowledge on religion in general. You know, how important is that background knowledge to this process?
Zero.
Zero.
Yep, not at all. Zero.
Right.
In fact, it could actually be harmful in some circumstances. If you have it, it's neither a necessary nor sufficient condition. I mean, if you have it, then you may be more likely to help people who share those very similar delusions, like Matt Dillahunty would be a great example of that. You may be more helpful because you're steeped in it and you understand how people think and the communities in which people live. But to understand that there are very, very, very fundamental problems with faith, and that either there are problems with pretending to know things you don't know, or the evidence is not what you think it is to justify the conclusions that you hold. I don't think one needs any knowledge whatsoever.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I would never trade all that knowledge for anything. I do it because I'm interested in it, but I was curious about that. How you would feel about that? Interesting. I get it. I get what you're saying.
Makes sense. But
and again, it's not a special secret trick or something mystical. You basically, what you need to do is you just need to do it. You need to go out and you need to practice, and you need to up your game and find holes. And I read an article in the New York Times a few years ago about genius. Basically, people who are geniuses, they work really hard and they always try to up their game. And one thing that a very good friend of mine said that I've been thinking about a lot is that I need to rip it up. I need to completely change everything and start over again. Because if street epistemology is a movement, then like all movements, it will come to end. I don't want it to be just a movement. I've been rethinking the idea that even though this is effective, this is takes a tremendous amount of time, and we seriously might, and I don't mean to be alarmist or anything, but time is of the essence right now with these delusions and weapons of mass destruction and all these problems. So I'm thinking about what that means to rip it up and what that means to reconceptualize this to make people who would be not as receptive to these things, like your brother, even more receptive to facilitate change behavior.
But, it's all part of a process. I don't have any goddamn answers, that's for sure. But I really appreciate the work that you've done so far. And everybody who hears the sound of our voices should go out and immediately buy this book. And
for sure.
A manual for creating atheists.
Yes. Yep. I was super excited to read it, and I was not let down. So thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. It was great talking to you guys. And let me know when it comes out, and I'll tweet our conversation.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Great. I'll keep you posted on my progress. So,
all right, please do.
For that.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
Take care.
Thank you so much, Peter. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, you guys learned something about me in there because I kind of broke a promise to someone that I'm having a conversation with that I wasn't going to talk about them or the conversation on the show.
We didn't know that beforehand.
Yeah, I know. And I didn't stop it because, really I didn't give away anything that,
No, and we've talked about him literally 9 times on this show.
I know. It's just.
And the fact that you're going to have this conversation with him.
Yeah, I knew that, even though we know who I'm talking about, I was in control of all the other information. I didn't give anything away that was personal. I feel okay with that. I just gave the details that he would need to, give us an idea and insight into how I think, he would direct that conversation, which, I didn't say this in the episode. I mean, he's really mastered these techniques. I think that, taking advice from him would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So. For
sure.
All right. Well, I am always completely wasted after doing an interview because I get so nervous about it leading up to it that I pretty much...
My boob was twitching the whole time.
Well, we didn't have the video up, so I wasn't able to see that and help alleviate some of my stress.
Yeah, I was definitely nervous for that one.
Yeah, it was great. It was a fun talk.
Yeah.
I mean, there was literally no effort put into that. It was just an organic conversation and
went off the script pretty early. Didn't go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're describing something to you which you just listened to.
Just heard.
I'm going to go.
It's the joys of recording the outro right after you do the interview.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go take my puppies out and then go to bed.
And I'm going to go eat dinner at fucking 8:30
Yeah,
at
I'm
night.
actually probably going to listen to this episode and geek out over it. So that's it. We will see you guys next week with more than likely logical fallacies.
Just leaving an edit point there in case you have to take that out.
Oh. Yeah, so we'll see you guys next week.
And as always, for God's sakes, don't take our word for it.
Granballard.
That's not a word.
No, that's one that I just made up because if Timmy gets to use Esperanto, I get to make up words too.
Good night.
Yeah, good night, guys. Bye.
You can reach us with comments, questions, corrections, or praise at atheism101@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at atheism101pod. Like us on Facebook at atheism101podcast. Or visit the website and donate at atheism101podcast.com.
All right, brother. Good job. Did I do all right? What? Oh, I'm still recording.